I've been mostly sober for 3 years now, after a decade of trying to quit, trying to slow down, quitting, never drinking again, falling back into it. Disaster, mess, the usual quitting story. But then 3 years ago, I changed the process, stayed sober for almost 2 years, had a fallback, learned from that fallback, and then 6 months ago, I started documenting the process of what I'm doing and what I've learned over all these years to make this the time that I'm going to kick alcohol in the butt. In this video, I'm going to describe to you the 10 most important things that I have learned throughout this entire experience, sum it up, make it practical so that you can shortcut the experience to sobriety. Let's get into it. First thing I did was a quitting ceremony. A quitting ceremony to me is a day where you acknowledge that this day is different. This is the day that I'm going to make a change and start implementing a change in my life. I think it's important that you do something unique, something memorable. For me, it was as simple as taking a beer and just pouring it down the drain. It doesn't have to be that for you. For you, it could be sharing this story with somebody else, somebody who doesn't know that you have this problem and opening up for that the first time. Making a video about it, writing in a journal for the first time, going to an AA meeting, something. But you've got to do something that is unusual, something that marks this day as different. I call this accepting the quest, because a quest is something that is going to be difficult and challenging. It wouldn't be called a quest if it wasn't that. So this is the day where you say, I accept the challenges of this journey that lies ahead. Let's go. Chapter 2 is don't count the days. When we quit bad habits, the natural thing to do is to say, I am 1 day sober, I am 2 days sober, I am 3 days sober, and on it goes. Now, of course, you're going to do this anyway, even if I tell you it's not necessary. But what I would like to contribute is that there is a better way, and that is to track a replacement habit instead of just your sobriety count. On the day that you do your quitting ceremony, take up a new habit, something that you want to stick to learn, to get good at, and start counting the days that you are working on that. If you start gym on the day that you quit, and you go every day for a while, then you go, I've been to gym for 1 day, I've been to gym for 2 days, I've been to gym for 3 days. Put your focus on the new thing. In a later video, I've explained how I've used this to upgrade my life by counting calories, counting my workouts, counting my expenses, tracking my expenses, and of course tracking my emotions. Probably the most important one out of all of those. So if you're going to pick one, start tracking your emotions. We'll get into how a little bit later. Chapter 3 is support. You do not need to go on this journey alone. In fact, I don't encourage that you go on it alone. You need support in this. And across a couple of different videos, I've looked at different ways that this can take shape. If you don't have a good support system around you for this at the moment, then the first step is to go look for a local AA group. This is what I did, and it was a huge help when I first started. But over the years, I found alternative ways that suited me just a little bit better. An important takeaway for me from support is that there are 2 types of support. There are people who have gone through the same problem or are going through the same problem. That is the one side, and then the other is the people that you deal with in everyday life. That is your friends, your family, your colleagues. These people might not have an alcohol problem, but they can also be a support. But it is important to realize that these are 2 different types of support, and you're going to have to learn how to go about having both of them and leaning on them in different ways over time. Chapter 4 is the discovery phase. This is the most important thing if you want to make your sobriety last, if you want to make a lasting change. This is the thing that I didn't do, and this is the thing that kept me in a relapse cycle for 8 years. Only when I started doing the work of understanding myself, of introspecting and understanding, why am I like this? Why do I behave this way? Why am I attracted to alcohol in the first place? Could I start to understand how to change and make real changes, deep, meaningful changes to my behavior? For most people, when alcohol reaches a point of abuse, it is usually a form of escape from negative emotions, from stress, from trauma, from inner pain. And until we actually start to address that pain, we will forever want escape. Even if you actually manage to get away from alcohol, the chances of falling into a new addiction in a different direction are actually quite high. So if we don't address what's inside, the chances of really healing from this are slim. So here are the subcategories of what it means to do introspection. First, try and understand your entire history with alcohol. Go back all the way to the beginning and look at all the different phases of your drinking, right down from when you were probably a teenager to being very rebellious and fun, going into early 20s or college days where it just kind of spikes, but it's the norm, everybody's doing it. And then how did that change in later years? How did you start to behave differently to other people? When did you start noticing it was becoming a problem? How long did that go on for? Try and understand the full history, the full timeline of your relationship with alcohol. The next exercise is to go deeper on some of those phases. Like, for example, what was important for me was going back into the good times. I wanted to understand why alcohol was good. Why I'm attracted to it. Why are some people attracted to that drug and this drug? But my choice was alcohol. And why is that? Something to ask is, what did I get out of it? In later years, you come to understand that it's just a very quick escape tool. So if you're having a bad day or you're stressed, you can kind of have a drink and you wind down quickly. But in earlier years, when I wasn't stressed, I was still doing this. I was still abusing alcohol. And why is that? Well, for me, that was because I was seeking a grand sense of adventure, something bigger than myself out there. And alcohol took away my inhibitions to approach girls, to get out there, to have fun, to see the sunrises. So for me, alcohol really was an adventure, a window to a bigger life, a more interesting life. Might be something completely different for you, and that is worth exploring. What did alcohol do for you in a positive way? And then, of course, as I already mentioned, also look at the bad times. How did that really look? How bad did it really get? And are you able to actually accept how bad things were? How many little lies still float around that you believe or that you tell yourself? And I will say this part is the most difficult to do, and it can take a long time before you're actually ready to step into this. The reason we choose escapism is because we struggle with negative emotions, and this exercise is to face them head on. So if this is something that you are unable to do, then I can highly recommend going to a therapist or getting some external support to be able to get into that. For me, that was, I had a drunk driving incident where I crashed into somebody else and I could have killed them. And I abandoned my car on the side of the road so as not to get arrested. I felt so much shame and so much guilt around that incident for so many years. I couldn't even think about it. When I lay in bed trying to remember what happened, it would just be like a shut out, don't want to think about it, can't deal with it. And it took a lot of writing and support to get to the point where I could really face what I had done. And then eventually work up to a point where I could let go of the guilt and the shame and kind of forgive myself. I still wish it hadn't happened, but I do forgive myself for what has happened there. And that is what had to happen for me to be able to accept all of this, be able to do this and move on. So definitely get help to deal with those traumas that were caused by drinking. And then one more chapter of introspection is, how did you get to the point where you decided, I don't want this anymore? When was that notion coming in that I think I need to quit? I think I've got a problem. And that journey of, I'm in a struggle now. Now I'm quitting. Now I'm trying to abstain. I think I might be an alcoholic. How did that phase go? Do you understand everything about what led you to quit? And have you documented why you want to quit? Having a strong why documented somewhere is so important because this is something you're going to want to rely on when things get difficult. Something that you can go and reference when you feel like giving up again. Of course, everything that I've just mentioned now must be done over time. It's something that you build up. Writing exercises, it's a skill that you have to learn. So don't expect to do all the miracle work in one day. Go at it slowly and let it evolve over time. But commit to the work. It's worth it. Chapter 5 is preparing for the dips. When you decide to quit, you could be full of motivation and feeling like, I've got this. And that's great. But at some point, that's going to fade away. It's not going to be amazing and great forever. The blues, the dip times are inevitable, and you definitely need to prepare for these. And the best way that has worked for me is, yet again, another writing exercise. This is where I use the emo dumping. This is where I basically have to acknowledge what I am feeling in the moment and just accept this is happening right now, and I don't want to run away. I don't want to escape. I decided that I would accept the quest, and this is it. This is the challenge. You know, I put on my armor, I got my sword, and I'm going out to rescue the damsel in distress. And when the dragon comes, I'm not going to just drop everything and run away. No, this is the quest. I'm here to save the girl. I need to slay the dragon. So the best thing to do is, the sword that I'm talking about is your pencil or your pen, and get to writing down how you feel in the moment. This is a tool that can help take the tension of that withdrawal or that desire to relapse away. Really just get real with yourself, express exactly how you're feeling. Nobody else ever has to read this. This is just like vomiting your emotions on the page. And if that doesn't quite cut it, if it's not good enough, a secondary tool that I also use is BREATHWORK. I can link to one of my favorite ones down below. I've got a 5-minute version, a 10-minute version, and a 20-minute version, depending on how severe the desire to relapse actually is. It's not always a relapse, sometimes it's just a very bad mood. And you can use these breathwork sessions to create a state change. Every time I do this, my before state is completely different from the after state. And the after state is always, of course, feeling much more calm, relaxed, and in control of myself again. And that's exactly why these are good to do. So in essence, breathwork is almost like alcohol, where basically I'm feeling stressed and I have a drink and it's like, the voices in your head just kind of calm down and you chill. Breathwork can have the same effect. And of course, it's a overall net positive. It's not going to do any harm. So if you've never done it before, definitely, I'm a big supporter of breathwork. Chapter 6 is preparing for relapse. Taking the previous chapter a step further, relapse is also part of the journey for most people. The newer you are to quitting alcohol, the more likely it is that you're going to probably end up relapsing a few times. Of course, the more prepared you are, the more you use the tools that I'm describing in this video, the more chances you have of reducing the likeliness of that relapse happening. But still, they happen. This is a challenge, and you don't get through it with a perfect score. That would be nice, but that's just not life. That's not how it works. There are, of course, many different types of relapses. There's having a beer when you shouldn't have, something that happened to me a few weeks ago. But then there's also the falling off the cart and getting completely wasted. And then there's also the, I've lost it, I might as well carry on binging, and that lasts for a couple of weeks. I've done it all. Over the last 15 years, I have done all of these things numerous times. But it was only when I started to apply everything that I'm mentioning in this video that the times between the relapses and the intensity of the relapses has diminished drastically. So you need to prepare for that, which is to say, do the stuff that I'm talking about in this video. But let's make that a little bit more practical. There is something that you can specifically do when a relapse happens that makes it less likely to happen again. And that is that you have to take the lesson. You have to extract the lesson from why this happened. So as with the introspection, look at the situation. What led up to that point? What actually happened there? Can you find the trigger of what caused you to be in this situation? And usually there is something to learn there that can help you plan for the next time you find yourself in a similar situation. If you don't do this, you're going to keep falling over every time life happens. If you do this, of course, then you are armed to be better prepared for the next situation. I call these mitigation tactics. An example of one is going for a non-alcoholic beer in times of desperation. Other people would completely disagree with this. I don't care. This is what I've done and it works for me. For example, if I'm going to be in a party situation at a end of year function, a Christmas event, a birthday party, you name it, then it is easier for me to say, you know what, I'm going to have a couple of non-alcoholic beers with me. It just smooths over the whole process. And usually I drink like 4 or 5 of them, and then I reach a like saturation point and it's like, I can't do this anymore. But then I also don't really feel the need to have real beer. So it solves the problem. I generally stay away from non-alcoholic beers because what's the point putting calories in my body that I don't really need? But every now and again, it is an aid and it helps me. The other important point about relapsing that I had to learn is to deal with the guilt and shame of it happening. You have made a promise to quit and you couldn't even stick to that promise, which brings up feelings, negative feelings, which again wants to make you relapse again, and it becomes a vicious circle at that point. So it is incredibly important to get used to not feeling guilty. How do you do that? Well, guess what? Another writing exercise that has helped me is practicing self-acceptance and self-forgiveness. Now, there are simple writing exercises that you can do to develop this with yourself, and I'm not going to go into that now, but that's something you can look up and it's something you can do to practice this. So when that relapse happens, you can deploy these writing exercises to deal with that guilt and shame, which will come up. And of course, it's also good to remember that the only thing that is really lost in a relapse is the count of how many days you are dry or how many days you are sober. And if you remember in the beginning of this video, we're not counting that, so who the cares? It really doesn't matter as long as you get back up on the horse and keep going immediately. All the progress, all the work that you're doing to heal within is still in place. The lesson from the relapse is worth having sometimes. So let's get rid of that guilt and shame as quickly as possible. Last thing about relapses is that this is the time where you will least want to seek out support. This is the time where you will least want to say what is happening. And it is the time where it is most important to do it. So once again, it is these moments when you are at your weakest where you need to have a good support system. So when you're thinking about developing a support system, make sure that it also has relapse time built into that for your mental state. You know, this is what I'm going to do. When that happens, I will go to X person and share the story with them and try and reason it out and try and make sense of it. Why did I relapse? What happened? What led me to this point? You know, get the external support for that. Chapter 7 is stop talking about it. This is something that I had to do after about 2 months of making my first videos on the subject. At some point, it was too much. I was so hyper-focused on the quitting process that it was dominating my life. Everything was about quitting alcohol, and I just kind of had enough. I didn't want to focus on that anymore. I wanted to focus on other things. And truth be told, that is also why this is my wrap-up video. I don't want to be talking about this anymore. I am not developing a don't drink brand, a quit sobriety channel. There's enough of those out there. This is me just documenting my experience and what has worked for me, and maybe it helps other people. It's definitely helped me because it's given me a support. So I'm wrapping it up. This is pretty much the last video unless something dramatic happens and I've got a new story to tell. But this is it. These are all the tools in one video, and I am going to stop talking about it and start focusing on other things in my life. And that is something that you need to be aware of, that at some point you're going to want to do that too. At some point, focusing inward and focusing on all the problems, it's over, it's done, move on. I've also called this building a new life without alcohol. And this is why it's so important to have done all that introspection to say, what did alcohol give me? What were the benefits of alcohol? And how am I going to get those benefits in a different way, in a healthy way? Boredom is, for example, one thing that gets all of us. It's like life is boring now without alcohol. So what are you going to do to fill that boredom? What, skills are you going to learn? What adventures are you going to set up for yourself? And this is something you have to be proactive about. Alcohol is just too easy, man. You just sit back, relax, and let the boredom go away. But now you have to proactively go out there, go hiking, go surfing, go learn a language, do something. And yes, that's more difficult, but in the long run, it is going to be rewarding. But plan for that. Do it. Then I will also add this. I haven't actually made a video about this one, but it's super important. Being bored is also okay. Sometimes just sitting and being bored is good. It's actually very important. One, you're developing that resilience to boredom. You're developing a thick skin to say, I can handle this. I can be bored and be okay with that. And to be honest, this has been by far the biggest challenge for me. I hate boredom. I hate it. I sometimes think I have ADHD because it's like I have to do something, So being bored is like a nemesis to me. But I have been practicing just sometimes sitting there and doing nothing for a while. Just to develop that, like, I'm okay with this. So give that a try too. And you'll be surprised that you can actually get very creative ideas. Good inspiration can sometimes come from this. A little exercise that I do is sometimes I'll watch like a YouTube video and then I will sit quietly with my eyes closed with a timer on for 10-15 minutes. And what happens is you end up sitting and thinking about that video in a deeper way, whereas normally you would kind of just start watching the next video and forgetting about the first one. So it is a way to engage more deeply with things. So yes, you're avoiding the boredom, but there is an element of just sitting and doing nothing, just but thinking a little bit about something. It's closer to doing nothing than nothing. Okay, moving on. Chapter 8 is challenge yourself. As if quitting alcohol wasn't a challenge within itself enough. No, I am saying to you, do more. Challenge yourself even further. This is something that has been hugely beneficial to me over the last 3 years, is that I say, let's make this harder. I accept the quest, but let's go on a difficult quest. And something like a dopamine detox for 30 days, where you cut out all junk dopamine. That means no entertainment, no cell phone nonsense, no YouTube. Just cut that stuff out for 30 days and see how you feel. And I mean, do this over and above quitting alcohol. Yes, it's difficult, but it's only for a short period of time. If you're planning to quit alcohol indefinitely for the rest of your life, then at least you have this other thing to focus on that is difficult, but that one comes to an end. After 30 days, you can kind of go back to watching YouTube videos or something else. But put yourself through an extra challenge. This could also be a challenge of discipline, where for 1 month or for 2 weeks, you say, I'm going to go extra hard at the gym and I'm going to track it, or I'm going to do this new thing. One of these challenges that completely changed the course of my life was a 30-day introspective writing challenge. I had no idea what was going to happen. I just started going for it. And after 26 days, I unlocked something. I started remembering some suppressed memories. And the more I wrote, the more I kind of remembered what had happened, and found that there was a trauma that happened in my childhood that led to so much of the behavior that kind of explains a lot about who I am and why I am the way that I am. And it was an incredibly difficult experience going through that. And there were tears and it was awful, to be honest. And after that, I even had to go and confront people about it. But that single-handedly changed the course of my life and led me to the point that I'm basically making this video. That I've reached the point where I just like go, wait, I can be more. I can take on difficult things. If I can get over that, I can get over anything. So bring it on. That is the power of putting yourself through something difficult over and above the difficulty of everyday life for a short period of time. A real period of intensity to which then you can also have a rest afterwards. So definitely worth doing it. Put yourself through challenges. The 9th chapter is emotional resilience. This is not something new. It's basically the thing I've been talking about the entire time already, but it's good to make this something that you're aware of in itself. Emotional resilience is the goal of everything I've discussed here. Alcohol, when being abused, is fundamentally just an escape from life's challenges. And yes, life is a bitch sometimes, and it's only natural that we want to just have some reprieve from that. But I will say this, you can build emotional resilience and you can face these problems. And when you do, they melt away. That does not mean you never have bad moods. That does not mean it doesn't still feel incredibly difficult sometimes, where you just want to give up and lose it all. This still happens to me. In fact, it happens to me regularly still. But I know it's happening and I know I can get through it. Developing emotional resilience is something that you can actually look up. It's something you can read about. It's something you can study and take much further. There are practices that can help you sit in the fire, as we like to say. You know this picture? This is the thing that you want to start becoming, because when you are able to do that, you don't need to grab for some kind of distraction to run away from problems. And in fact, the opposite starts to happen. You start to become the fireman that can put fires out. And through that process, you start to feel proud of yourself. And that is the best feeling ever, when you start to feel like a capable person. So accept that life is difficult, that it is painful, but that you are willing to meet it. You are willing to accept the quest of a difficult life. This is separate from alcohol. Alcohol is just a little coping mechanism, but we're talking about the big picture of life, that we're ready to sit in the fire of it. So take your quitting alcohol as an opportunity to start that journey. And hopefully in time, you will be able to find the real pain that caused you to abuse alcohol and heal that. That is something that is happening for me, and it is something that I really hope can happen for you too. And with that, chapter 10, be proud of yourself. Be proud of yourself from the very first day that you accept the quest. Be proud of yourself from the very first time that you realized, I've got a problem and I want to do something about it. It's not going to feel like a wonderful journey all the time. It's at times you want to give up, and at times you're going to hate yourself for having fallen off. But you need to be proud of yourself. You've got to find it within yourself to find gratitude towards yourself, to say, I am doing this. I'm doing this despite the difficulty. Build that emotional resilience and become self-reliant, a person that you can rely on. And when that happens, other people can start to feel like they can rely on you too. And that is, at the end of the day, an incredible feeling. And with that, I am now officially closing this chapter. This is the 21st video in the series. I want to stay true to the thing that I said, that I don't want to keep talking about this. It is not my focus in life to grow a channel and be known as the guy who quit alcohol. I'm just a dude quitting alcohol, getting it out of my life and building a new one. And now it's time to move on to other things. What I will continue to talk about on this channel are basically all the tools that I have used to improve my life. It's the same stuff. It is the writing, the introspecting, the breath work. It's all this kind of thing. It's like, but I would like to look at it in how it's helped me in other ways too. For example, one of the reasons I abused alcohol in the first place was because I was actually a workaholic. I used to commit to the hustle and grind culture to the max, and that burnt me out, and I needed alcohol to escape it. So it was this vicious circle of workaholic, alcoholic, workaholic, alcoholic, workaholic, alcoholic, work all day, drink all night kind of life that I was living. And breaking from alcohol didn't stop that. That was a separate process that I had to go through. And there's plenty other things that I'd like to and I would also just like to make some more fun videos and stuff. So that's it. Thank you. I hope that this video is helpful. Thanks. And one more time, thank you to the community of people that have built up around this. I am going to continue needing a support group, and a little project is brewing around that. So stay tuned if you would like to know more. That's it from me. My name is Dean. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a supporter of this journey over the last 6 months, and I wish you all the best to a good, happy life ahead. All the best.